All right, let's see how quickly we can make a Russian nesting doll. So I'm going to start by making a part. I'm going to use whatever unit system I find convenient for myself. So I'm going to start in inch pound second, just because I have a better idea of what the size of those units are going to be. I'm going to change from MMGS to IPS. I'm going to go to my front plane. It's my favorite plane to sketch on. And I'm going to give myself a fairly generic spline pattern of basically a little head. And then a slightly larger body. And then I'm going to close that off with a vertical line going down the middle of the part. And just to give Solidworks a clear intention of what I want to do here, I'm using center line that's a little bit longer than that. I'm going to clean this up. So I'm going to exit the line tool, click on my spline, and I'm going to make sure that these first two lines are horizontal. So I'm going to click on this line here, make it horizontal. That's going to make the top line all flat. And then do the same thing on the bottom of the spline. From the bottom line, click on the horizontal, that's the bottom of the doll flat. Then I'm just going to balance the kind of curvature of the head, the neck. That's a little bit more what I want. I don't want this neck to come in too far, just because that'll make it hard for me to get the kind of the balance of where it nests together. Harder to manage. So that looks okay. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to revolve it. Select my axis, which I was hoping not to have to do. Hopefully my good, but I'll open up. And so that'll be the core of my doll. So I'm going to save this as the desktop and make a new folder. NST doll. I'm going to say this as core. Now what I want to do, the core on the nesting doll doesn't come apart, but all the subsequent layers are larger, empty versions of the core that have a split around the middle. So I'm going to make a derived part from this core, scale that up, cut it out, and then also go through and kind of add those pieces to it. So I'm going to do a new part. I'm also going to make this in inch pound second. I'm going to go to my core. I'm going to find my core file. So I'm going to my desktop, my nesting doll, my core. I'm just going to drag that in this window. I'm saying, do you want to make a derived part? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to click on the green check mark because I want the origin of this derived part to be the same as the original part. I'm saying yes to make the units the same. I thought I'd already done that, but make sure that it's consistent. And to make this a bigger hollow version of the doll, I want to scale this up, then I want to shell it out so that's a certain thickness. And then in the assembly, we'll verify that that thickness is appropriate. I also want to make sure I have an clearance that these things are going to fit together in my assembly, and then I can kind of cut them apart and have that work. So to make them work as two separate cut pieces, I really need to have a top and a bottom configuration for each of these. And then I can also make my scale a configuration. So let's walk through that process fairly quickly. First of all, let's scale the part. So I'm going to use the scale tool to make this bigger relative to the origin. So use scale. And I'm going to use a uniform scaling about the centroid of the part. And I'm going to make it 1.5 times as big. And again, I don't know off the bat that that is an appropriate scaling. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my assembly to check and see, hey, does this nesting doll actually fit together by looking for collisions and moving it around based off those positions. So that's my new doll. I need to cut it into two pieces. So I'm going to go back to the front plane and I'm going to sketch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the line that I want to cut this around. So I'm going to start on the outside of the doll. I'm going to go through it a little bit. I'm going to make a little bit of a shell, and then I'm going to come all the rest of the way in towards the middle. And then I'm going to give myself a center line that goes vertically through the origin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to thin revolve this, and then I'll shell this last inner portion after I do that. I might want to add some dimensions to this just so I know exactly how big it is. So we will give that some dimensions. I'll make that 1 inch. I'll make this little end section 1/10 of an inch. I'll make this section here. I don't really want to go down that far, just enough of a shelf that I have capacity there. Something convenient for this angle, 45 degrees. That's going to help us locate the 2 levels of the doll. And then you just figure out how far up it needs to be from the origin. So just going to get that point. That looks good. And now I'm going to use my features tool. I'm going to use a revolve cut. Actually, I do want to make sure that this point here lies on my center line. So I'm going to make sure that lies on my center line as well. So I do want to totally cut this doll into 2 complete pieces. So I'm going to do revolve boss base. I want to say no, so I don't want to automatically pose this. I do want to use a thin feature. I'm using mid plane, and I want this to be really thin. This is really just the clearance between the 2 halves of the doll. So I'm going to make this 0.01. So 1/100 of an inch. I'll accept that. That's right. I also want to make sure that I'm not merging these 2 together. So I'm going to unclick the merge feature function. Now I've got these 2 portions. I'm going to subtract the disk that I just revolved from my original body. So I'm going to use the combine feature. And I'm going to subtract from this core body my revolve. And then I'll keep the remaining bodies. Now I've got my piece. Now I'm going to make 2 configurations, 1 configuration for the top and 1 configuration for the bottom. So I'm going to do a new configuration. Call this bottom. And then I can rename my default configuration. So if I start with my bottom, because that's the current configuration that's active, I'm going to delete the top. Again, this is not the same as actually deleting the body. It creates a feature that deletes the body that we can roll back and suppress and treat like any other feature in Solidworks. And then I'm going to shell out this bottom portion. So I'm going to use the shell tool. And so preview here. And a thickness of 0.1 inch, that's probably appropriate. Let's just see what it looks like. Okay, we've got a little rounded edge there. That looks okay. I'm going to save this. We'll call it outer layer. And then I'll switch to the other configuration. And in this configuration, my delete of the top is suppressed, and so is the shell. So on this new configuration, I can delete the bottom and then shell the top. That one didn't quite work as well because I have this large overhang from this inner edge here. But what I can do here is go into our shell options. And I'm going to use a multi-thickness shell. I'm going to set the thickness relative to this guy here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Bottom here. And I'll make this thickness very small. So let's say this is 0.01. Not 1.01. And so that makes this overhang on this portion quite small. Another thing that I can do here is if I want to get rid of that edge, I can add a round to that. It's going to really kind of cut away that edge even with a fairly small radius round. So that helps kind of smooth that out. Okay, just a couple of kind of tricks you can do to get that to work out a little bigger. If I wanted to totally cut out that top edge, I could. But I do want it there to help me locate the doll relative to the bottom portion. We're going to save that. Now I've got these 2 configurations. I can put them together to make my next step. So I'm going to go into an assembly. Make something apart. Let it load. In my assembly, I'm going to start with the core. add my outer layers. So getting back to assembly, insert components, do outer one, accept. And then I can change the configuration of this to top and bottom. And also insert another component. And because I'm using that check mark, all these are fixed to start off with. So this is the first original configuration. I can look at my section view. I can see that nothing is hitting each other at the start. I can also evaluate, look at interference detection, calculate that I don't have any interferences, so those fit together just fine. And I can float my top, and then I can move it. And I can move it in a specific direction as well. So I'm going to move it along X, Y, Z. And I'm going to look for collisions. So I'm going to stop it if I hit a collision as I move it up. So move it up. You can see I can move it up without back down. So I can confirm these components will nest together without hitting each other. And I can go back and I can change the profile of this to do that again and repeat as many times as I want. If I want to get extra cores of this to get more layers of the doll, it's pretty simple for me to come into my outer component. And I can either modify this scale or I can scale again. Again, if I want to scale again, all I have to do is I can save this as a new part. I'm going to save it as a copy and open. Right, so this is saving as a new name without changing references to the original file. So I should leave the original file where it is. Change this to outer 2. I can keep the original document open, that's fine. And I can edit this scale, and I can make it say 2. And that broke my part. If you have that issue, well, maybe we just scale it after that. Again, use the scale feature again. And the breaking is most likely because the thicknesses of the cut that I did on the original were all intersect the model the way they're supposed to after that. So I can save this. I want to make sure that actually that scale exists in both configurations. Yeah. So I'm doing my bottom. Not sure why that one. Oh, because it has this new scale still. So I changed the scale. For all the configurations, and then change it back for one of the configurations. So I'm going to unsuppress the scale in the bottom. So now I can check and make sure that my top and my bottom will work fine. And we're good. This is outer 1. Outer 2. Oh no.
I think you left the second one as 1.52.
Yeah. Well, I meant to change outer 2, and I changed outer 1. So now I have them in the wrong order, which is okay. It's just inconvenient. So now when I open my outer 2, this one doesn't have the scale. You shouldn't have the scale. It opens. Give it a second. Very good. I'm gonna open that part now. Then outer 2. Not sure why I doesn't want to open that part. I'm gonna try putting it in the assembly. See what happens. Yeah, it's the same size as the outer 1. I can change the bottom configuration as well. The bottom configuration on outer 2 is the right side. The top configuration is not. I don't know why it's not letting me open this part though. There, that's fine. We just need to rebuild. All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna copy this one, paste it in again. Now I've got my two configurations for the top and bottom with another layer, which is what we wanted. This one here, it's getting a little bit offset. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make the right planes together, so I can only move it vertically. And I'll also make the front planes together. That's just gonna constrain my part a little bit more. And I can do the same thing for this bottom one as well. Again, go to my move. I can check and make sure that my new layer also doesn't clear. And I've got that handle set up. I'm gonna move it just to the point where the right collision again. So it's collision on, right down. I want you to stop that collision. Why it's not stopping at the collision? Stop at the collision. The model is starting to like, so I was saying it's colliding already. Oh, probably these ones are colliding. The top on the bottom portion. Let's go to my outer two top. Let's move that component. I got to float it first. Let's float that. Well, the bottom is not. Let's fix the bottom. Don't want the bottom to be free. Float top. And now they're not colliding. And we can move them down into a collision position. Like, evaluate. This should be colliding with anything. Do I have an extra layer, maybe? No, it looks okay. I'm not sure what it thinks I'm colliding, but I don't think I'm actually colliding with anything. I'm just gonna get this close so we can see what the exploded view looks like. Probably just need to save and close this. Last thing I wanted to talk about briefly here was just how to do the exploded views. So on here in the assembly configuration, we have the option to add an exploded view. So we do a new exploded view. And then all we need to do for this is go through the steps of moving the components. And the hard thing that can be admitted here is we want to add step after each time we move. So I'm going to move up. Then I'm going to hit done. Then I'm going to move it to the right. I'm going to hit done. Then I'm going to move it down. Hit done. And I'm going to move the middle doll out. So I'm going to click on both of these parts. Let's do it from the model tree here. We do the core and the outer two components. Get the wrong selections. Core and outer two. Move those three up. Sorry, I didn't done. Up, done. And then over. Done. And then we can move them down. Then we put the lid back on the first one. And you can be much more specific about these if you want to use the exact distance move. Maybe a little bit too complicated with this process, but you get the idea. I get impatient with this sometimes because I want it to move faster than I can. I probably should look in to see if there's an auto done. Step speed movement after I do it. That'd be easier for me. Or you can move more than one direction at a time. All right, so I put a bunch of movements in here. And what I can do in this exploded view, I can animate the explosion. And I can also animate the collapse. Kind of fun, right? There is a lot of utility in this in terms of communication of assembly processes to anyone. So if you want to show someone how a thing is supposed to be assembled together, then this is a great way to do it. Also, if you just want to communicate the number or the complexity of components in an assembly, you can explode these things out just to show where all the parts are, what all the parts are for. You can record these to AVI, you can stack this on top of photo rendering, so you can make really kind of high quality animations, although it's a lot of work to do that the way they have it set up. So hopefully that makes sense and you enjoy watching this. You can put it on a loop, you can just constantly assemble and disassemble dolls. I want to go back and forth, sorry. Assemble the doll, disassemble the doll, assemble the doll, disassemble the doll. And it will play like that for. We can make it go faster. Or slower. You see a lot of options. All right, that's it for today.